Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is John Frassinelli. I'm the Division Director of School Health, Nutrition, and Family Services and Adult Education at the State Department of Education. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm joined by some partners both in and out of the department. I'd like to introduce first our colleagues at the department who will be doing the bulk of the conversation tonight with you. I'm very pleased and very thankful that our Chief Academic Officer, Irene Parisi, is here to join us and share her expertise and her wisdom with regard to academic success and remote learning. We also have Joanne White, who is our literacy and English language arts consultant, who will also be speaking this evening. So again, thank you. Thank you for joining us. As you may be aware, we have these every couple of weeks in the evening so that you can attend. The same way that you registered for this event, you can register for future events. And so please continue to look out for those and join us when you can. So with that, I'm also pleased to welcome Ingrid Kennedy, the Executive Director of the State Education Resource Council, and our esteemed colleague who will take us through the rest of the evening. So Ingrid?
Thank you so much, John. Good evening, everyone. Good to see some of the familiar names already. For those of you who had joined us the previous sessions and are joining us again today, I have also with me a couple of my colleagues from SER, Nitza Diaz and Greg Glidden, that are also helping us, and our colleague from the department, Judy Carson, that is going to be helping us as we also begin to make sure that this session is one that is going to be meeting your needs regarding those questions that you have, specifically to remote learning and academic success. So it's definitely a pleasure for me to be again with all of you this evening, and we will go ahead and start since we have a nice evening prepared for you to give you the opportunity for you to ask your questions. So with that said, we're going to make sure that we share with you the way in which you are going to be able to interact. For some of you, this is very familiar already since you have been with us before. But we want to make sure that to provide you with that information. So in order for us to be able to know if, to make it interactive, we have our Zoom features. So in the Zoom features, if you are able to go into the reactions, if you click on the reactions icon of your Zoom feature, you will be able to see right there that you can actually provide us with some reactions to what you're learning, listening. So I will ask if you can just give us a reaction right now. You can do thumbs up, you can do a heart, you can just do a little bit of an expression to make sure that we are all fantastic. I see. Okay, great, we get it. We got it, wonderful. So this is a way for you to tell us that you are listening to the information, and the information that you're hearing is one that is definitely useful for you as well. So and the next slide is we're going to share with you how you're going to be interacting to ask questions. There's a couple of ways, and we would like to do that, to ask questions of the panelists. You can actually use the chat feature. You will see it on the Zoom bar, the chat feature, and you can actually type your questions, and our guest speakers will be able to see your questions coming through, and in some cases be able to answer them right live. And also we have some of our colleagues, as I mentioned, Nitza Diaz and Judy Carson, that are also going to be taking note of those questions that you might have. In addition to that, we are going to give you the opportunity to ask your questions live. So in order to do that, we will ask you to raise your hand, and my colleagues are going to be able to tell us who has their hand up and is ready to ask the question. When we do that, we will ask you to please unmute your microphone so that we can actually hear you ask the question live. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and start our session together, our questions and answers right now. So actually, when you register, many of you send us some great questions. So we're going to start there. We're going to ask our guest speakers to answer a couple of questions that were already submitted. Then we are going to go into the live piece of it, and then we're also going to grab some questions from the chat. So it will be 3 ways in which we're going to get a lot of your questions answered. So let me go ahead and start with the first question that it came our way. So this question, actually, Irene, it will be for you. So one of our parents asked the following question: how to support children elementary school age specifically, to stay on school websites on days where they learn remotely from home and not go on other fun websites like free gaming websites and YouTube? Great question. How do we keep them on the school websites? Irene?
It is a great question. And honestly, it's been a longstanding challenge, right? Keeping students' attention on task and completing their assignments that are put before them when they're in class. And it's now even a greater challenge, certainly, when they are working remotely. And you yourself, as the family members at home, are now the teacher, right? And wanting that. I think what we've tried to message over and over again is finding balance. And we've asked teachers, we've asked districts, and all those that are designing the learning plans to incorporate within the learning plan the time to play. You know, students need to explore. So we have seen some successes in some districts and models that allow for like a 5-minute exploration at the start of the day before they actually get started in the learning. And then there's the learning plan that would follow after that. We also ask that you incorporate some good routines. So routines that you might be used to in the classroom, like even just some of the classical routines that we're used to, where you might stand up and stretch, or I know as a 3rd and 5th grade teacher, we would do brain gym, and we would just do some stretching exercises, or crossing your midline and doing a figure 8. I think those things still hold true, and they can happen even in a remote location. So what I have seen is successful in that plan is providing that routine for kids that I've seen some just written out as: you wake up, brush your teeth, have breakfast, get dressed. You know, having that, I mean, that helps with just even the social, emotional, and mindset, you know, being ready for the day. And I've seen districts be successful in asking students to plan your day. You chunk out your day, and how many minutes would it take you to complete a particular task? And then also, if there's planned breaks that you would normally have in school, what are those planned breaks at home? So I've seen districts too, where like most districts have Wednesday as like a remote day, and like if you're hybrid. So if you are normally having a mask break in school, you can still have a mask break at home, but it's not necessarily a mask break, but you're taking a break. And certainly get up, stretch, go get a snack. Hopefully now they can go outside and stretch a little bit, and then come back and get back into the learning. I think we have to acknowledge that being in this digital space for so long, you have to honor that and give them a break. And so we have asked districts to ensure that you're incorporating that into the learning schedule or the learning plan. And if you're not seeing that, I would encourage you to advocate for that with the teachers, working with the principals, provide some of these ideas that I've just mentioned. It does have to be chunked out. One thing that I have learned too is a timer. So a lot of the devices have a timer on it, or I'm going like this because I'm used to the typical egg timer that I would use in the classroom. And scheduling your chunks, the student can do this themselves. They can turn the timer, and then they're self-advocating, kind of, we call it self-regulating their own learning, how long it's going to take me to do this work. So maybe that physical timer is just enough of a motivation to just kind of twist, how many minutes do I need? And then doing the task. And when the timer goes off, it's like a reward, almost like how much have I accomplished in that amount of time, and then I'm rewarded with a little break. There is a technique out there, and I have a slide I can show you, and certainly I can share it in the chat, or you can Google it. It's called the Pomodoro technique. So it's really like a Pomodoro tomato timer, and it actually has a protocol that could help students. So Ingrid, if you'd like, I could share my screen really quick and show you what that looks like. And certainly, I would encourage folks at home, you could use a device, a mobile device, if you want, and just take a picture of the screen. And certainly I can upload it into the chat.
Yeah, that would be great, Irene. If you can share the screen, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. So let me just expand here. So I think you can see it. I'm going to try and move it over. Sorry. But essentially, I'll stop hovering over it. So this is just a simple image, and it's a simple method. So finding balance and having those deliberate breaks. And it's called the Pomodoro technique because you might find that Pomodoro tomato timer familiar. And so they're calling it one Pomodoro for 25 minutes, and then you take that break. And it really is just helping to educate adult learners and students that I need to figure out how much time does it take to do that particular task and have that reward of the small break and feeling like I've accomplished something in my learning plan. So this is one technique that is out there, and I love this graphic because it just visually it's pleasing, but also reminds us it may take me multiple Pomodoros to actually complete a particular task. I know some people are taking a picture. I'd like to try and present it. Yeah, I think I can do it here. I'm moving multiple things, maybe not, but I'll put it into the chat. It's one slide and it's very easy. But the point here is that I think we have to recognize, I'm going to stop sharing. I hope. Thank you for your
Very nice.
patience. Thank you for your patience. Yeah. So this is, how do you find balance? Kids have to explore. And I'll give another example quickly. When we're in the classroom, and I know dry erase boards with the magic marker was always something fun for kids to play. And we often would make the mistake to say, no doodling. I would allow students to doodle. You need 2 minutes to just doodle and get it out of your system, right? And go ahead and do it. And when they knew that 2 minutes was up, we're going to get to work. The same thing applies here. I think allowing for some exploration or visiting that favorite game or site that is certainly approved by you and the school, or something that might be on the district website, let them play for a moment, having that few minutes of exploration time that you've agreed to, and then they'll get right into the learning, and then finding appropriate routines and appropriate breaks within. So
Thank you so much, Irene, for that.
you're welcome.
For all those steps, I was actually taking notes myself. I do have a Pomodoro timer, so I'm going to make sure I use that myself. And when you mentioned about the doodling, and I'm just going to, I'm one to do it all the time. I got sticky notes and I just doodle when I'm paying, and that's my way to pay attention. So it works for me. It's a great strategy as well. Thank you so much. And one thing that you also mentioned, which I was going to go back to the question regarding the fun websites, and I heard you said that if they do the work, maybe part of the break, it will be for them to have access to the fun website that they want to for a particular amount of time as well. So thank you so much for bringing that into full cycle for our family. So really appreciate it. So now the next question is for you, Joanne, if you will not mind answer this one. How do I find out what subjects, skills, etc. were left out of the curriculum and not taught to my child due to COVID-19 this year and last year? How can I find out? Where would I go in order to find out that information? What was left out? Joanne, thank you.
It's difficult to know, or it can be difficult to know by subject area what was not taught on any given day, right? So that's the first challenge. I think, one thing to think is about the fact that the skills and understandings that students embody and use and practice and learn, it doesn't necessarily happen in a discrete way. So my background is ELA, English Language Arts Literacy. So I won't pretend to be able to speak to math as clearly and coherently. But it's this idea that when we engage in mathematical problem solving, when we engage in reading practices, we're using a collection of skills. So think of it in this way. A particular skill, an isolated skill, may not have been covered in a student's class on any particular day, but that skill may have been addressed collectively so that students were able to engage in a text or solve a math problem on another day, right? So if you look at the Connecticut Core Standards, I mean, for ELA across the grades, K-12, I think there are 1,098, right? So who's going to go down the list and say, oh, we missed this skill on this day, this skill on that day, in this grade level or that grade level? Think about it in terms of curriculum, right? So it could be that in some cases, schools omitted certain instructional units in service of covering other units of study and the lessons within the units that addressed a greater collection of skills and strategies and understandings, and then customizing, for students as needed, some of those skills and understandings that needed more direct instruction, if you will, right? So school districts, they did receive a great deal of guidance in how to group skills and buckets of knowledge, if you will, within units of study and lessons, so that they could be sure to cover so breadth and depth when needed, right? I don't know that you'll find a situation where schools and districts just omitted a big part of the curriculum, right? Unless the course was canceled, and that happened on college campuses. So I think that's a different scenario. So to the extent possible, individual schools have been working to make certain, that they're covering, what students need to know and be able to do in order to be successful in engaging in a text or solving math problems. And then again, pinpointing those problematic areas and providing additional instruction in those areas. Now, what it does mean is that some of the popular activities didn't happen in some of those lessons, right? Teachers had to rethink, gee, how do I deliver this content remotely or in a hybrid model? So things may have been omitted. Some of those, more popular activities may have been omitted. So I'm sure that did happen. But in terms of making sure, the students, received an equitable and appropriate education from last year to this year, including the summer learning, it's ever evolving. Districts and schools are always working on that, and they will receive more guidance prior to the close of this school year and going into the summer months on really developing those programs to meet the needs of students. Now, keep in mind, we've been meeting with districts all year long, right, to talk about how to meet the needs of the students and how to adjust programs. But the truth of the matter is, yes, some things were not covered in the traditional manner. And so it's just understanding then how those things were covered. I think that the best thing to do as families is to provide opportunities for practice, practice, practice. Practice reading aloud to students. Have your children read aloud to you. Engage in discussions about the texts being read. Engage in discussions in general. Talk about those wonderings, and then practice engaging in discussions about how to obtain information about a topic of interest. All of those self-paced, self-guided inquiries, really support students in their formal learning, right? So definitely talk about math. So thinking about elementary students in particular, we have a recipe, and there are only 3 people in the home, so we need to divide this recipe in half. We don't need to make 12 dozen cookies. How do we cut that recipe in half? Or 4 dozen cookies, we need to cut that in half. Well, what's half of 3/4 cup? Well, we need to figure that out. There are some things we have to talk about, right? And if we're talking milk, dividing 3/4 cup in half, and we're talking flour, do we really have to do it? Will it make a difference if we just put 3/4 cup of flour in? Well, try it and see what happens, or have a discussion about what is half of 3/4 of a cup, right? How do you, what's half of an eighth of a teaspoon? How do we figure that out, right? So practicing skills learned goes a very long way. I think that as families, we shortchange ourselves about how important it is to continue those discussions and processing of information and engaging in dialogue. So very important. So very important.
Joanne, thank you so much for that comprehensive answer. And one of the things that I heard very clearly, and I also hear that from Irene as well, is the work that the department is doing with the school districts in order to provide guidance for the continuation, for them to make sure that they facilitate the uncertain situation that we find ourselves, and for them to ensure that they also are giving that level of guidance as well to the family. So thank you so much for that information to both of you. So at this time, what I would like to do is actually, Irene, I'm sorry, is that you're raising your hand? Oh,
Yes,
perfect.
I'm trying to model and use the tools.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add to everything that Joanne has shared, that we did release guidance for districts on how to prioritize the learning, because we knew that districts, it was going to be like this flow of in and out, or whatever the learning model might be. It had to be responsive to that reality, right? So I think what I'd like to share to families is that there might be certain things that you're used to seeing, like rites of passage by a certain grade. Like there's always this unique 5th grade exploration project, or 8th grade, they always did a particular project, and it's kind of like a rite of passage. Those are probably some of the learning experiences that might have been removed for now, to prioritize specific standards, as you know, as to Joanne's point, that these are things students need to know, be able to do, and demonstrate by the end of the school year, because it impacts the learning for next year. So, and I think in some ways that might be a good exercise districts have gone through. There are certain things that they do just because they've done it over every single year, that maybe we look at it different, and there's a new way to redesign that learning experience. So I did want to share with the group that we did release guidance on how to prioritize the standards. These are the essential learning outcomes for all learners, and do make that a priority in your practice.
Thank you so much, Irene, for that extra information. Thank you. So this time, what I would like to do is I'm going to go and transition us into some live parent and family members and participants questions. So let's use the feature of on our reactions to raise your hand. If you would like to ask a question directly to one of our guest speakers, now is the time for you to have the opportunity to do that. So I will do my 30-second pause and wait to see how many questions we are going to generate and how many hands are going to go up. So I will wait and see, and I will ask my colleagues to alert me when that happens. Okay. Do I see Elizabeth Gonzalez? Yeah. Elizabeth, you can go ahead and unmute your phone, your microphone. Here we go. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Hi,
Hello.
nice to meet you, and I'm glad to be participating in this program.
Thank
I'm very
you.
excited. I have 2 girls, 11-year-old, and I have a 16-year-old, but she's autistic, high functioning. So my struggle is, like you guys explained, to keep them alert and focused and like excited for schoolwork, because I see sometimes when they're all day in the screen time, like they get bored, they get tired, they get sometimes, depending on the work, they're not challenged enough. And especially my autistic child, she's like hyper, you know, she can't sit still. So if she sees something at work, like she's like bored already. Like she's in high school in 11th grade. For example, she has a class that she has to watch CNN 10, right, on the curriculum of her classwork. And then she has to sit there and watch the news like for 10 minutes, but within that 10 minutes is like 4 different news, and then she gotta answer the question, and she gets tired, like she don't want to do it. She does the finance, like she's okay with the other classes, but that class is a challenge for her. Like she can't, it bores her, she's not interested. So I want to know how could I make it interesting so she could do the work and not fall behind in class.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for that question. And I'm going to say kudos to her for enjoying finance. My goodness, I need to clap. That's amazing. So we need to,
She's
that's
actually
wonderful.
good in that class.
That's
And she's like
wonderful.
very artistic, so she gets high scores. Like
Wonderful.
she's a A/B student, but that CNN 10, like
So-
she won't budge on it. She really, it's so hard for
So-
me to get her to get interested. I'm like, I'm gonna sit next to you, watch it with you. I'm like, Ma, still.
Thank
It's
you,
funny.
Elizabeth. So let me see what our guest speakers have for you regarding some suggestions to support you there. Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Irene or Joanne? I see Irene that you have unmuted your
Sure.
phone. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think Elizabeth, I think you are the Elizabeth that put it in the chat about the Pomodoro technique, if that is something that could work. And I do think it can. So again, the idea, just the actual physical movement of how much time will it take me? So if the CNN piece is in 10 minutes, set the timer for the 10 minutes, take a break, step away, process, and then come back and do the next piece to the task. I don't know the design of the task that you're referencing, but there is evidence that shows that that chunking of the work or just even time management helps students. So whatever, I don't know all the specific needs for your child, but it is something to try. It's not going to be the end all be all, but I think it's worth a try, right? Have a go with it. And I would also say continue to be an advocate for your child and talking with the teacher, really being a partner with a teacher, like this is what I'm seeing at home. What can we do different? Or is there another approach? I think that ongoing conversation with the teacher has to take place, and hopefully you have that. And if not, then keep pushing, keep going back and trying to talk with the teacher to say, here, what is working, what's not working for my child, because ultimately the common denominator is to make sure your child is successful by the end of the year. So those are 2 things right now. I'll stop so that Joanne can weigh in.
Yes, I wanted to piggyback on what you said, Irene, about suggesting that parents connect with teachers. And who is it? Judy will put in the chat a link for accessing a website that I guess coaches parents and reaching out to districts. So conversation starters, suggestions for when to reach out, how to schedule the meetings. And there are videos that show different scenarios about how to approach what could be in the moment, somewhat difficult topics to discuss. The other thing I want to share with you, Elizabeth, just to reassure you, is that, teachers are, I'm sure it's hard to see it, but I'll read the cover to you. Folks are engaged in professional learning. So this is a steep learning curve for teachers also. The book that I was trying to share with you is entitled The Distance Learning Playbook, Grades K-12, Teaching for Engagement and Impact in Any Setting. So that's just to let you know that, folks are still learning this too. But any of the suggestions that they find in this professional learning series, they are willing, to implement. I did not give this to Judy to put in the chat, so I will do it, Judy. And then if you would add it to the list of resources, that would be great.
Thank you so much, Joanne, and thank you, Irene, for those response. Elizabeth, hopefully you will be able to get some tips. And as other questions come out, you will be able to use some of those tips as well. I'm going to check with my colleagues. Do we have any other hands up for live questions?
I think you had one. Brown, I think is the last name.
Okay. Yep. They might decided to change their mind. Okay. So with that said, let's see if we have any questions on the chat that our guest speakers are able to answer. Judy or Nitsa, do we have any posted?
We have a question we got earlier
Okay.
From a parent with a student who is in the higher end of the spectrum of achievement, quote unquote gifted, and in this remote learning, they need extra support. And so are there any tips for the resources or things that can be done for students at the higher end of achievement, especially related to their social emotional learning?
Great question.
So I can begin, Ingrid. It is a great question. And again, whether we are face-to-face or online or in a remote location or on campus, this is always an area of focus, right? And what are we doing to really personalize or differentiate the learning for all of our learners? And oftentimes learners with a giftedness is a bit of a challenge. And in my experience, often want to just give you the answer because the answers come easy. So what I have seen that is a great benefit to learners that demonstrate a giftedness in any one or more content area is explaining your thinking, or how did you arrive at that solution or that answer? And sometimes I would even work backward. I would give them the answer and explain how to get there and arrive at that answer. So you're kind of doing a performance task, but in the reverse. If you know what I mean, because again, the answers come easy. So if we provide the answer, what would be the steps that you would take to recreate to actually get there? And again, oftentimes within the standards or within a lesson, you'd like to see an application across other content areas. So if it's math specific, how do you explain it in the written form? How might you visualize it using some sort of scientific model or in an artistic way, and really integrating all of those disciplines or other strengths in there? And oftentimes I've seen, you see the sparks with students because you want to get beyond just the right answer. You want to get to application. You want to get to the explanation or even presenting their ideas. And certainly, if there's an opportunity, how can you be a voice for others and do something for the greater good? How might you teach that concept to a peer or to a classmate or to your parent? Creating a presentation to your parent of how you arrived at that answer. So that's just some of the ideas. And again, always talking with the teacher about what is happening to promote that and build off of my child's strengths is something that does have to take place. But that's my initial thought. And that's what I would be doing. If I were in the classroom now, I would be finding those types of ways that there was multiple opportunities for students with a giftedness to demonstrate that they have deep knowledge of what's being asked of them.
Thank you so much, Erin.
Mhm.
Thank you. Any
Yeah, I
other
just
questions?
wanted to
Oh,
say
go ahead,
that,
Joanne.
yeah, I agree with those comments. And I was thinking along the same lines about product and process and results. So the distance learning playbook that I put in the chat also speaks to that same line of thinking. And then the other thing is this idea, right, of productive struggle. And Irene mentioned it, it's the ability to arrive at the answer very quickly because you know the content, because of your giftedness, which happens in different areas, we know. But my point is, even as a gifted student, that productive struggle is it's a very important part of the learning process. And I think that sometimes I think that this is actually a good time while students are in this protected environment in the home, to really talk about what that productive struggle means, because it's going to prompt certain feelings and ways of dealing with that productive struggle or being engaged in a productive struggle, it's very different, right? So think about how we experience situations that are so very different and what emotions that may prompt. This would be a good time, right, while students are, cocooned, if you will, to learn more about this idea of productive struggle and how sometimes it might be frustrating and it might make you feel anxious or sad or lonely, or this is a great time to push the envelope, if you will, in working with your children, because it will take them a long way and make them even more successful potentially.
If I
Thank
can
you.
add,
Go ahead.
Ingrid,
Sure.
I have found one of the most beneficial questions to ask students, and I would give this to parents all the time. So if you ask a child, like, what have they learned, or what are you working on, and what are you doing, and they share their answer, the follow-up can always be, what makes you say that? What makes you think that? Because it forces them to really go back and say, why am I saying that? What knowledge can I lean on and now share? Or why am I thinking that way? So I would encourage all of us to just, when we're presented with, here's the answer, or here's what I've learned, well, what makes you say that? And just keep, we talk about asking more questions and follow-up questions to get that thinking in the conversation. And that is a great conversation starter.
Thank you so much to both of you. And a couple of things that I heard in your responses, and I love the concept of productive struggle, because many times we associate the word struggle with negativity, and linking it to the productive pieces. I'm going through this, but it's going to yield a positive outcome, and I'm going to get to an answer, and I'm going through this process. So for those, definitely, I took notes of productive struggle. I'm going to use it because I know that I go through productive struggle a lot. So now I'm going to call my struggles productive. The other piece that I heard from you as well is the product, process, and results. How do we make sure that we focus on those areas for those of us on the line, the product, and results? So thinking about how we go through the process in order to be able to reach that answer, or if the answer is given, how do I going to make sure that I work almost backwards to get to that? How do we achieve that? So thank you so much to both of you. I'm going to see if we have any other hands up. Make sure that we have any live questions coming our way. If not, I have a couple of more questions. So we have some questions that were
I
sent
don't
to us.
see any hands up, Ingrid, no hand.
Okay, thank you. So I do have a couple of questions, and I will present this to both of you, Irene and Joanne, and just your perspective about it. Given the amount of time that our children are spending in front of a screen, do you feel, the question that the parent asks is, how is my child affected by the dramatic increase in screen time? Is there something that we can do about that? Or should I be concerned as a parent because of the amount of time my son or my daughter is spending in front of a screen? Any suggestions, any thoughts from your perspectives?
Yeah, I think initially it's taking a look at the settings on the computer and adjusting for eye strain. You might need to get help with that, or Google. I've done that quite a bit, so that the screen, the resolution, the brightness adjusts automatically with the amount of light coming into the room. Or sometimes I just take the brightness down a bit or reduce the blue light. I know that some people wear glasses designed for that. I don't have those, but some of my colleagues do. The other thing goes right back to what Irene talked about, is setting those routines, right? And using the timer. And Irene, I'll let you take it away, because all of that too is so very important. You have to take a break.
Navigating the tools. Yes, thank you, Joanne. I like how you started with the idea, because there's a couple of things here. The idea of accessibility. So take time to research the device that the child has. What are the accessibility features within the device? Because you are in control of that. So hopefully every district has someone in the IT department that can show you how to change the screen settings, change the audio settings, perhaps. There's the speech to text or text to speech. Even for those, there's other accessibility tools for students with needs, as far as like for even hearing impaired. There's a lot of accessibility features, and most devices have that as a feature. So it's usually in the general setting. So I would look at that. The other thing to consider too is like the learning piece. So screen time. Screen time is a concern, but what I like to try to do is define it as passive and active screen time. So I think teachers across Connecticut were very focused on providing active screen time learning. It wasn't passive. And when I say passive, it's like when you're streaming something, you're just watching a video, or you're just kind of scrolling through social media or scrolling through other different websites. When it's active screen time, it actually activates a different part in the brain and is asking the student to think differently about the content that they're seeing or listening to or reading. So I think we can all feel confident that the learning being provided has been active learning, which requires active screen time, engaging, doing like reading and responding, or reading and interacting in some way and presenting their knowledge. Most of the digital tools out there have been asking kids to do that, whether it's Seesaw, Google Classroom, Schoology, and so on. Even collaborating on a device, that's active screen time, whether it's in a breakout room or in a discussion thread. So I wanted to just share that there's two ways to look at screen time, passive and active, and let's try to lean more towards the active. Certainly there is balance in finding time for some of the passive type of screen time. And I would advocate again for the accessibility tools to find out more about that so that you can make the device what it needs to be for your child. So.
Thank you so much for that, to both of you for those comprehensive answers. It's great information. I'm going to check with my colleagues to see if we have any questions in the coming through the chat.
You have one that's asking, what kind of rewards might you recommend for good work?
Great question. I love it.
I think it depends on the child. So first of all, I think we have to define good work, right? Is good work adhering to an agreed upon schedule during the learning period? Is good work getting the correct answers? Is good work being engaged and participating in one of the breakout rooms and staying engaged and involved in the conversation? Is that how success is measured? Is success receiving a high grade on a quiz, right? So first of all, it's defining success for you, for your family, with your child. And then the second thing is, what are the rewards that really matter, that don't cost anything necessarily? A reward might be, I get, and going back to something Irene said, if I get a reward, I'm making this up as a child, if I get a reward where I get 2 minutes to just Google whatever I want, 2 minutes straight, just going from site to site to site, I love doing that. For me, that's a reward. For some kids, it's a task, right? So it's just figuring out, what it is, your child is interested in. And then the other thing too is cultivating this idea of responsibility and thinking about incentive versus reward. Because I think that, while we want to provide incentives, that doesn't mean necessarily that every thing that the student does or completes needs to be rewarded per se, right? And then it could be that together, breaking down a very lengthy project, and it could be breaking down a project into stages. Here's first we have to gather the resources. Next, I need to read through these things. Next, I need to make some notes. And it could be that at the end of each stage there, that the reward is, whatever it is you decide the reward should be. It could be as simple as, and I wanted to share this, very simple way of staying engaged, right? I know it's hard to see this, but basically this is just a sheet of paper. And on the paper, I made some squares, and in each square, I drew a picture of what the task is supposed to be as the student. So let's say the teacher assigned some pages for reading. So I drew a pair of eyes, and I wrote 8 to 12, because those are the page numbers. And the next, in the next square, I drew a light bulb and a group of 4 students, because that's the next thing we're going to do after we read. And so if I use this system, consistently, so that I stay on task and I know what we're doing next and why we're doing it, then does that get a reward? Well, we have to keep track of what I'm doing and how I'm engaged. And then that might be something I earn 2 minutes of Google time for, because that's what I like to do. You know, it's not as simple. I don't think it's as simple as you completed a task, you get a reward, right? So you have to just think through the purpose, and also I think focus on cultivating responsibility and incentives, not as rewards, but as an individual, I want to complete this task, or I'm engaged in this because. So it's understanding the whole reasoning behind it. And that happens by talking through this with your child or your children, you know, about there's a purpose for being on task. There's a purpose for getting this work done. And the greater good is I will then learn whatever it is, or be able to do whatever it is. That in and of itself is the reward, right?
Thank you,
So-
Julia.
Ingrid, if I could share 2 responses. So one is something that I think anyone can really do, and it's the power of a sticky note. And just writing that, and I thought that's where Joanne was going, but writing that inspirational message, or like even just simply, you got this, or I appreciate how you're taking your time with this, and just that little sticky note, whether it's on their device or on their desk, or just somewhere on their mirror in the bathroom as they're getting ready. Like you're going to have an amazing day, be amazing. There's nothing like having that written message on a sticky note, because you can find it and put it anywhere. It is something that I used to do in practice and face-to-face, and I continue to do it now. And I do it for my husband. He's a teacher, and I tell him every day, be amazing with your kids. And that motivation, and just in that written form, there's a lot of power behind it. And as we talk about social, emotional, and health and well-being. The other thing I wanted to share is something that I've learned from our colleagues statewide is, and so I advocate for whoever's listening, you either share it as a parent, or if you're a teacher on this webinar, maybe give it a go. So I have heard where an incentive is, and I guess you'd have to define too, what does success look like, and what are the expectations? So what teachers were doing, especially at the elementary level, is they would have lunch with the teacher of their choice. And so they would create a Zoom room, and in that Zoom room, they were having lunch together, because students wanted to stay connected to another adult in the building. Or they had yoga time with the PE teacher. Again, the school would have to organize those opportunities, but it became part of the school-wide plan and commitment to keeping learners engaged, and their promise to that social, emotional health and well-being. One creative thing I saw, which I thought was fantastic, is one elementary teacher, she would do almost like a network food star. She was always cooking. So it was always cooking with Miss Rosenberg. And so she would send out the ingredients to the families beforehand and say, on this day, I'm going to be cooking, I'll make it up, baking an apple pie. So if you want to bake with me, here are the ingredients you will need, and join me on this Zoom at this hour, and we're going to bake an apple pie together. And so she would do it like a Food Network show, and the families are either doing it together, or some kids reported that they were just joining the Zoom and watching it, eating popcorn, because they were just so engrossed in seeing Ms. Rosenberg bake the apple pie. So I think in some ways, how do you leverage the tools we have before us? And those were some of the creative ways that I do think can provide that incentive, or just a way to connect in new and different ways, but still holding on to some of those tried and true classical ways to keep them motivated, which again, the power of a sticky note, it's priceless.
Thank you so much to both of you for those answers. And I just wanted to share, as you mentioned that, Irene, I just wanted to extend our gratitude to all the families that I'm listening, and to the teachers in this space as well. The creativity that has come to play between the families and the teachers exchanging ideas, and what you just shared, that's amazing. It just made me like, wow, I can see that. I was visualizing this happening, the kids being excited about hearing their teacher just bake a apple pie in front of them as a, I love cooking. So it just immediately connected with me. So thank you for that. And thank you to all the parents and the teachers that are today the line, because you have been doing amazing as educators at all levels, for the teachers, educators, and their families as part of that collaboration and in supporting the education of your children. So thank you. Which is leading me to the next question that I have before you. As a result, and I'm being very conscious of the time, this is so engaging. I want to keep asking questions that you have sent to us. So let me put one more this space, especially now that many schools are going back into full in person. So this parent asks, how do I help to transition my child socially to a classroom with other classmates, especially since they've been on a remote learning for so long? So if you can just provide these parents some guidance of how can that happen, some levels of support, how can the parents support the transition?
So go slow, go slowly. I think that, you know, it's again, it's about having these conversations. And Judy, if you would, I think I pulled together a book list about, I think the books are about perseverance and some other related topics, I believe. So use children's literature, if you will, you know, to reorient students, your children, to in-person learning. I think it's having discussions about anxiety, about the unknown, speak factually, and reassure students, your children, that they are resilient, that they can do this. Some children are going to barely wait for you to get them out the door, or they're going to close the door behind themselves as you're still talking, saying, okay, now make sure you do this, make sure you do that, and they're just out the door, and they'll be fine. You just have to wait and see how they are when they get home. Others, of course, and you know your children, you'll have to have conversations, you'll have to reassure them. Again, I think using children's literature is a great way to go, no matter the age. If you have older children, let them read the book and talk about things. Let them connect with their cousins, let them connect with older siblings, younger siblings. But again, it's having those guided conversations about what to expect. Look to the guidance from your schools, from the districts. And again, and Irene can speak more to this, that the State Department will, you know, has been and will continue to provide guidance to districts for making sure that schools reopen in a manner that is most supportive, you know, to students. So those are my initial thoughts.
Thank you, Joanne. Irene?
Yes, I would agree that the teachers and building administrators, the districts are thinking of the same thing. How do we transition back if we haven't been in-person learning for some time, and being mindful of, like, what does a compassionate classroom look like? We've all experienced some form, you know, acute trauma right now. So I think they're asking the same thing. How go slow, and what are the routines that we want to recommit to, you know, and other routines that we may have to renew. I think there are some traditional routines that it may not make sense to bring those back because they weren't working for us before, and now we've learned that they may not be working for us now. So I think that's front and center for a lot of districts, and I would encourage you to engage the teachers too, to say, here has been the experience of my learner and what has worked best, and be mindful of. So I think one of the bigger challenges will be students that have been primarily remote and learning online are probably used to getting up when they need to and stretching and moving around. Now, when you're back in a classroom space, that just may not be very easy. So how do you self-regulate? How do you self-manage? So that might be some skills that we have to help them develop as parents and as teachers, to be mindful that you're now in this confined space, and you'll have to monitor that too, that you cannot just get up out of your seat and walk out or walk to the other side of the classroom. So how do we equip them with those skills? And I think that's a good conversation to have with teachers. And so when those opportunities come up, whether it's being presented by the Board of Education or the principal, or there's a coffee with the principal, whatever it might be that the district is doing, I think we have to have these conversations now so that they're aware of your concerns and they hear that and anticipate the needs or the strategies that have to be in place.
Thank you so much, Irene and Joanne. Being very conscious of the time. So for the parents on the line today, thank you so much. And if you please help me thank our guest speakers today by using your reactions or just by clapping, just to be so grateful to the information that it was provided today. And thank you for all of you that send us questions. Great questions. And as I was seeing some of the things that you were asking on the chat as well. So thank you so much. We will be putting together a lot of the resources, and we will be sending those ones as a follow-up as well. This session was also recorded, so we will make that available soon, and it's going to be translated as well in different languages. So make sure that you spread the word that these sessions are taking place. As we come to an end, I also wanted to share with all of you, as John mentioned at the beginning of the session, we have a couple of more sessions coming up. So you need to make sure that you register for those sessions as you have registered for this one and the previous sessions. So just to provide you with some information, the next session is scheduled for March 23rd. That session is going to be completely in Spanish. So just to be clear, that March 23rd session is completely in Spanish. So if you are bilingual and you would like to join us then, you're welcome to do so, but that one is going to be completely in Spanish. However, we are going to be replicating that session on April 6th. In that session is self-care and social emotional learning for parents and caregivers. This is amazing. Kudos to our colleagues at the State Department of Education, because all the sessions so far have been about you asking about how to support your children. And this session specifically is for you. Come ready to ask the questions about how can you take care of yourself. You know, this is the concept of how do we put the oxygen mask on us first in order to be able to support others. So the social emotional for yourself. So make sure that you come prepared to April 6th. It's completely in English, March 23rd in Spanish. So make sure that you join us again. And with that said, on behalf of my colleagues that have been behind the scenes, making sure that the session runs smoothly, thank you so much for being with us one more time. And at this time, I will give it to John so he can close us for the session. John?
Thank you, Ingrid, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Great conversation, great questions. I really want to also thank our panelists, Irene, Joanne. Thank you, Nitsa, for answering things in the chat, Judy Carson for setting it all up, and of course, Greg behind the scenes who's making everything run smoothly. And then lastly, certainly Ingrid Kennedy, our wonderful facilitator and partner at CERC. Thank you so much. Great job, everyone, and please join us for future webinars. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care. Have a great evening. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.